City Council knows this ordinance has been through both a workshop numerous months ago, first reading, and now we're here for a second reading. I know City Council has received some comments between first reading and second reading. This is the Bathhouse Ordinance. With regards to those comments, I would just state that this ordinance has been crafted in a way as narrowly as possible in order to not overregulate. Also, to the extent that the businesses are covered under this ordinances, the additional regulation would be one that it would be up to the business whether or not they choose to participate in that area that's being regulated. And again, I would emphasize that this is a narrow area that we have crafted in a way that we believe is not going to overburden businesses, and yet at the same time regulate an area that City Council has heard and considered about an area, whether or not it needs to be regulated. We do not believe this ordinance is overly onerous, and we believe the city can work with these businesses. Anybody who has any questions or concerns can reach out to City Council for an opinion about whether or not, in fact, they need to be permitted under the ordinance. I believe those will address most of the concerns that have been raised since the first reading. However, I'm here to provide any additional information to City Council. I would also note that Captain David Goodman is here today. He's also here in case City Council has any questions for Captain Goodman.
Thank you. All right, so Councilman Rennick.
Let me ask you, if this ordinance I'm asking for your professional legal opinion. If this ordinance is challenged in the court of law, do you think we have a good chance of defending this ordinance successfully?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir? That what
yes,
you
sir, I do.
Okay. We're going to hold you to this. All right, that's all.
All right. What I was going to suggest, if there aren't any more questions from council at this time, is that we go ahead and hear from the public, and then if council members want to weigh in after that, that would be fine. So if anyone would like to address us on item number 49, which is the second reading of this ordinance, now would be the appropriate time, 3 minutes per person.
I'm going to be using some visuals as well. All right, my name is Joseph Manson, and I've come before you before. I'm with the group Clean Up Kennedy. I think it's quite a coincidence that today is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. Just happened to be that way, so I encourage anyone to go online and search National Human Trafficking Awareness Day and look through this couple of sites that come up. Get familiar with the warning signs of human trafficking and the resources that are available to the public to report things. Human trafficking is something that affects millions of people here in the U.S. and tens of millions or hundreds of millions, by some estimates, around the globe. This here is a map of over 9,000 illicit massage businesses, and the map is taken from a database of places that are actually advertising on adult review sites that review these places as places where you can go and have sexual favors done. So this kind of shows you the impact, and the little things are little doohickeys that say where they are kind of big. So I'll kind of show some other maps. This is a map of our area, actually, and you can see the concentration there on Kennedy Boulevard, which is why I started Clean Up Kennedy. But this isn't a unique problem to the Bay Area. We have a map of Orlando here, and it's a national problem. I got another city here, Charlotte. It's kind of a city that's kind of equivalent to Tampa in population and stuff like that. And then Phoenix, Arizona. So you can see it's a national issue, and almost every center of population in the United States has this issue with illicit massage businesses. We have an opportunity here in the Tampa Bay area to do something special, and we have an opportunity to make this map look like this. All right? And when people look at these maps, they're going to see Tampa, and they're going to ask, what's different in Tampa? What are the people in Tampa doing? And they're going to see a city council, and the community working together to solve this issue. And then they're going to see that, they're going to ask how they did it, and they're going to follow our example. So the eyes of the nation, and some of these people from some of these other cities that I showed there, are actually looking at Tampa right now, looking to see what we're going to do here. And I would like Tampa to be known as a city. If people look at the city and if you're in the business of exploitation, that Tampa is a bad place to set up shop. Thank you very much for all the work that you put into this.
Thank you. All right.
Hello, my name is Beth Erickson-Shoup, and I am the Outreach Chair for the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Tampa Bay. And I apologize for being late to the game on this. It was just brought to my attention. I don't live in the city of Tampa. Trafficked persons are trapped not only by their actions of their traffickers, but also by the structural inequalities that create fear and vulnerabilities. Poverty, discrimination, weak worker protections, restrictive immigration policies, distrust of government institutions, and shame are all manipulated by traffickers to entrap those who see no better or safer option. Laws, policies, and community attitudes can either foster freedom and empowerment or repression and dependency. All efforts to address human trafficking, community education, social and legal services, investigations, prosecutions must be collaborative, client-centered, and trauma-informed. A comprehensive trauma-informed, evidence-based programming approach is necessary and effective to ensure survivors successfully exit trafficking without re-victimization. Services must be continuous and consistent over the long term and include emergency services such as emergency shelter and safety planning, transitional services such as legal counsel and transitional housing, and long-term services like job placement. Often human trafficking victims are unable to obtain employment, housing, or other financial supports due to a criminal history resulting from their victimization. The Bathhouse Ordinance currently does not provide a victim-centered approach in services and prosecutions, or directs law enforcement to avoid arresting and prosecuting victims for crimes that they were forced to commit as a result of the trafficking. Nor does our justice system allow victims to vacate prior convictions related to their being trafficked. Both of these would allow victims to access much-needed city, county, and state services. It took the Massachusetts Interagency Human Trafficking Policy Task Force a full 18 months to identify, study, and agree upon the most effective and efficient ways to address trafficking in their 2013 Findings and Recommendations report. I am urging the City Council to delay your vote on this ordinance and further workshop this by inviting in victim advocacy groups such as the Freedom Network USA, who's been working in this field for a long time, and our local Restorative Justice Coalition and Sex Worker Solidarity Network to ensure that it is victim-centered. It has been promoted as an anti-human trafficking ordinance, but because it does not address labor trafficking, it is narrow in its scope.
Thank you.
I urge you to delay your vote. Thank you.
Next.
Hello, council members. My name is Julie Solis. I am a co-founder and organizer for the Sex Worker Solidarity Network. First and foremost, I must make this abundantly clear. We are here today because we are ethically obligated to be here, not because we want to make a scene or protest for the sake of protesting or to gain activist points. We are here because we desire a more compassionate approach to legislation, not harsh surveillance. You claim that this ordinance will not throw human trafficking victims in jail, but really, how do you make that distinction if you are to find illicit activity, coerced or otherwise, isn't the general tactic to arrest first and ask questions later? Every mugshot is public record, every arrest, the details, the date, the picture. Even if no charges stick, the mugshot is still publicly available and easily searchable online. A public record, even without charges, can provide barriers to housing, employment, and insurance. There also seems to be a general conflation between human trafficking victims and consensual sex workers. Despite what seems to be the popular viewpoint that all women in the sex work industry are exploited, and even going as far to say that they are trafficked, the reality is that some people choose this, and they can even find fulfillment through the flexibility and financial independence sex work can provide. I can personally attest to this, as can many others that I have personal correspondence and camaraderie with. Did anyone take history class in high school? Does anyone recall the Prohibition era? Is anyone aware of the absolute failure of the Nixon administration's war on drugs? Sex and drugs are not going to go away just because you throw more stuffy legislation at it, and it's certainly not going to address human trafficking. Decriminalization of alcohol and cannabis, for example, have proven to be a better approach to properly legislate by not criminalizing things that are simply just not going to disappear. Whether or not you have moral or ethical reservations regarding these realities is completely irrelevant. You must expel these moralistic prejudices first and foremost if we are ever going to be able to have a conversation about compassionate and sensible legislation. Victimizing victims further through harassment and terrifying them with surveillance and raids is a completely counterintuitive approach. You will push them further into the arms of their abusers and traffickers, and you will just push this horrid exploitation and attack on basic human rights further underground. At this point, I have no interest in attempting to appeal to bureaucratic expectations of decorum or in trying to gently persuade council members to hear our plea. As a result, I will be nothing but firm in my stance. Your ordinance, as it is, in the implementation of this ordinance, if you choose to pass it, will only serve to prove yet again that you are more interested in tightening up legislation so you can exert your control over the citizens and push the way you think the enforcement of the law should be without considering the impact it could have on victims. If you choose to not be perceptive to the pleas of your constituents, then we will continue to push until you realize that you are public servants who should do things that are in the interest of the public. If you truly care about addressing the problem of human trafficking, then you will consider a more compassionate and sensible approach, not further tightening of the rule of law and touting it as ethical and just. To close, I ask the council members present to delay the vote on this ordinance, please, and bring those whom this ordinance will affect into the conversation and take their needs into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Angel D'Angelo, and I am a native to the city of Tampa. I was born here, so I'm very proud of this city. I've taken time off work to be here, so please do excuse me ever so politely if I'm not able to stay the whole time. Human trafficking is obviously very deplorable. All of us at the Restorative Justice Coalition and Sex Worker Solidarity Network want to see human trafficking end. However, at no point in the history of ever has over-policing ever created a solution. According to the National Survivor Network, 90% of human trafficking victims face an arrest at some point in their lifetime. Some upward of 10 to 25 times. You know this because I'm sure you've read all the research I've sent you over the past month. Probably not. But anyway, 70% of those who were arrested and received convictions were unable to have those convictions expunged, despite the fact that they were victims. Which, as you may know, our criminal justice system sets people up for continuous failure, as they're unable to get gainful employment, housing, federal benefits, and many other resources. Of those 70% or 90% rather that were arrested, only 40% could account for their trafficker actually also being arrested. And in most cases, the trafficker had their charges dropped. Now, you can't tell me that you think the Tampa Police Department is going to go in there and be able to tell the difference between a victim and a sex worker or whoever's in violation of the law. So they're going to perform arrests. And I know that because that's what they've already been doing. On top of it, when you look at a University of New York study showed similar raids by their police departments resulted in over 3,000 arrests for prostitution and solicitation, but only about 30 or 40 arrests for human trafficking. We don't need to clean up anyone. The way you all were talking about the houseless issue, we can't keep pushing people in the margins and expecting these solutions to come forward. They do not come forward by pushing people out. If we want to help victims, let's help victims. We've provided you with so much research. Read the Criminalization of Human Trafficking report by the University of New York. Please read it. Sit with us and let's come up with a common solution that works for everybody. Victims, sex workers, the city. There's no cleaning up. We're talking about human beings. Earlier I heard someone refer to the houseless as a burden. People, human beings are not burdens, no matter who they are. A city is only as good as the soul that it has, and your soul is only as good as how you take care of the vulnerable. That includes sex workers and human trafficking victims and the houseless. So please, delay this vote. Do more research. Reach out, read what we've sent you, and make an ethical, soulful decision. Thank you.
Next.
My name is Joshua Valancourt. I'm a co-founder of Clean Up Kennedy. Something I could never get enough of growing up were stories from older relatives. Some were simple and lighthearted, like when my great-grandfather moved to Phoenix and saw a particular mountain. Others were much more serious, like hearing about a family's house being destroyed in World War II. Eventually, I heard all of the stories that my family could remember, and I began to love history. I learned the stories of those that had gone before me, and I had wondered what history would look like in 50 or 60 years, and what kind of story I would have to tell. I knew the evils of human trafficking generally all my life, but as I grew older, I became more aware that it was very close to me, so close that I drove past it regularly. I viewed it as a big system and a powerful system that I did not have a way of stopping. Optimism came to me last year as first there were whispers, then there was news, and then eventually there was actions. The actions of ordinary citizens who saw the abuse of others could no longer be complacent and chose to try to do something about it. In advance, I thank the City Council for giving us all a story to tell, not about houses being leveled or mountains of beauty, but about the time we all worked together to make it a little bit harder to do evil to the people next door.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michaela Arati. I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America as well as the Sex Worker Solidarity Network. I don't have much to add to the, in my opinion, flawlessly compelling arguments against the passing of this ordinance which were made before me. I just want to echo how imperative it is, at the very least, to delay the passing of this ordinance until sufficient research can be conducted to construct an ordinance which will actually contribute to the safety and well-being of true victims of sex trafficking. It is appalling to me that this ordinance would pass in the face of existing data to support that decriminalization and a victim-centered approach is the most effective legislation to combat the very real issue of human trafficking. Not only will human trafficking not be addressed under this ordinance, but it will place further undue harm onto already marginalized victims of trafficking by disincentivizing them to seek legal support. Additionally, it will place economic and bureaucratic strain on small business owners and disproportionately on small business owners of color who are already disenfranchised within our community.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Matt Cufaro. Before I begin, I just want to congratulate Guido Maniscalco for taking a positive stance towards Faculty Forward for adjuncts. I appreciate that. I also want to thank the offices of Mike Suarez and Guido Maniscalco for actually calling me back when I did call to ask about their stance on the Bathhouse Ordinance. So while many before me have made, I think, excellent points towards this, I will also have to leave early because I am here on work time. I do want to amplify their points concerning the place of policing, especially towards marginalized peoples and victims. It's not a restorative act to engage or empower police in order to make their judgments and raid businesses or survey businesses. It's a way of empowering the arm of the state in order to make judgments about which businesses are valid and it's empowering the police is never a positive solution. If your police is empowered, it's an indicative of the condition of your city and the condition and the choices that you guys are making towards addressing the social economic origins of sex trafficking and their victims. So I want to amplify the points of the people before me who illustrated that there is social economic inequality and other aspects which amplify or aggravate sex trafficking as a problem. Rather than targeting the symptoms, we should be targeting those causes. So I would like to cede my point on that. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, City Council. My name is Krista Hernandez, founder of Loving You Where You Are At and author of No Safe Place from Childhood Abuse to Sex Trafficking. I myself am a survivor of sex trafficking. I was in that life for 20 years. And no little girl dreams of growing up and being sexually exploited. Something goes terribly wrong along the way. I see the sex workers, when you're in that life, it's easier to act like it's all okay and it's this great job, because then you don't really have to internally feel the pain as long as you're acting like it's great. So I get that, what they're saying as far as, right now it's all great because they're still in it. And you have to make yourself feel that way to survive. I also want to state that the places that I know this ordinance is speaking of are the Asian massage parlors, the lingerie shops, the places that we know are brothels. I worked in a lingerie shop, which was a brothel. My organization and others, we go into these Asian massage parlors and we reach these women, and we are building relationships with them and loving them, and I can guarantee you they're not there by choice. These women are being forced to be there. So just to let them, know, I don't think anywhere in this ordinance it's saying that if you choose to go into a strip club and you want to dance, that has anything to do with this ordinance. This ordinance, from what I understand, is for the women who are being held in these illegal brothels. I also know that through this, we've been working on a safety net for these women to be in place, as well as implementing a John School. I was at a event the other night with City Council Mike Suarez, and I know that one of the things he was saying is, these people who are renting out these places, they know. So we have to make it harder for the people renting out these establishments. Another point that was made by Corporal Alan Wilkett from the Pasco County Sheriff's Department is that there was a study done on buyers and non-buyers, but they were asked the same question. What would it do to make you stop buying? And their answers were, well, if we had to be registered on a national, like a sex offender, if we had to be registered, we wouldn't. If we had harsher punishments, we wouldn't. And if our family had to know. So Tampa, we have a chance to be the change and take this nationally to where these buyers are being registered as sex buyers. And that is going to help eliminate this issue. We have to get the buyers and the porn industry in order to end it, but this is a great start to protect these women and to start shutting down these businesses and putting pressure on these businesses. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning. My name is Nikki Cross. I don't want to sensationalize this because it's been done enough in the media. I am on the Free Board Council. We fight very hard for victims' rights. But I came into this because 43 years ago, I was one of the 5% that get abducted. I was taken out of state. I was chained by the ankle in an attic for over a year. And you cannot imagine the atrocities that I faced. It took a lot of time. There was no such thing called human trafficking or understanding about this. I had to deal with this internally. 20 years later, I finally get the big picture because I see this documentary about this woman who's been taken and she's been chained up, and the picture goes off in my head. I was trafficked. And 27 years ago, before I even called it human trafficking, even knew that I was a trafficking victim, I started working, I started an organization called STAR, Stop the Abuse and Rescue. Many of these women that have come to me, law enforcement will have me come in and speak with them so as to take the "you don't understand" card off the table, because they don't believe that anyone could possibly understand. They didn't want to do this. I'll speak specifically to pornography. Pornography, everybody thinks that's harmless. There is no harmless pornography. I have had women that have come to me crying their eyes out telling me, I had to make it look like it was fun. I had to look like I enjoyed it, but you didn't see what was on each side of the camera. These women are forced, they're coerced, they're told that they're going to make millions of dollars. they don't see a dime. They're exploited to the hilt. And what we'd like to see in 2012, I started talking John School, and we are finally getting to that stage where we're going to see that happen. It hasn't happened yet, but we're going to see it happen, because it's got to be full circle healing with everybody. And there will be restrictions on who can attend. You know, you can't be a sexual predator, and you can't be someone that has been a harmful offender. But it gives, I've been working with the Brooklyn DA, her results in Brooklyn, New York, once they started their John School, 1% recidivism. You show that map that you showed a few minutes ago, what you want Tampa Bay to look like, that's what we'll get if we get the John School. And so I would really like you to think about this ordinance before you vote.
Thank you.
I'm Dottie Gruber-Skipper. I'm the Anti-Trafficking Director for the state for the Salvation Army. I'm also appointed by our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to the Statewide Human Trafficking Council. And I've been involved with this issue for over 30 years, and I hate to admit that, that's kind of a long time, but I've worked tirelessly with precious survivors. You've heard from Krista and Nikki and many, many other survivors who will tell you once that they are out of the life, I hate to use that term, but out of the life, that they realize that it was really not a choice, that they were in it because they were forced, frauded, or coerced. And the sex worker solidarity, folks, I think we're all on the same page, because what this ordinance will do is it will not criminalize the women. There is a safety net. We're working hard with the stakeholders in Hillsborough County, with our state attorney, with the public defender, with city council, with the 13th judicial system, to implement a process, a diversion court for those who are caught up in this. They will not go to jail. They will have an opportunity to go through a program instead of going to jail. And my friend DJ Reyes is in the audience here, and he heads up the Veterans Diversion Court. And I think, many diversion courts that we have in Hillsborough are very successful. And this prostitution diversion court done right will also be very, very successful. Nikki, who just spoke, indicated the John School. She has been working on getting a John School in place for the longest time. And what we have seen in the many years I've been involved with this is those who go to a John School and hear how the sex trade business and industry really is, they are horrified, and that they vow not to take part in that anymore once they know the reality of the situation. So there are many of us. I have a personal ministry where we go and minister to the women in the adult entertainment industry, and I can tell you none of them want to be there. None of them want to be there. It is sexual exploitation, and prostitution is illegal. So if it is going on in these establishments, it's illegal, and it should not be taking place. Instead of arrests, there would be a program to help, not further victimize, not to criminalize, but to certainly help those that are enslaved. And I thank you, City Council, and I hope that you will move forward with voting to go on through with this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
Hello. Good morning, City Council. Thank you all so much for listening to everyone. I know...
Can we have your name for the record?
I'm sorry?
Your name?
Dana Lazarus. Okay, so I know for a fact that all of you have big hearts, and your hearts are in the right place. And I know that a lot of time and due diligence went into crafting this ordinance. And I know that the opposition, the Sex Worker Solidarity Network, came in to the game kind of late. We can't all know everything that's going on all the time. And so, we just heard about it kind of late in the game, and tried to mobilize very quickly to start a conversation. And we are we have a narrative that is different than the narrative that most people are used to around sex work. Obviously, we all care about stopping the phenomenon of women being exploited. But the fact of the matter is, there's a couple facts of the matter from my perspective. For one, some people want to do sex work. I understand that it is illegal, and it is something that we need to address at the state level, heck, at the national level. Other countries where sex work is legal, it allows more women to actually seek help because the work that they're doing isn't stigmatized. They don't have to worry about being arrested. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating information that other people already said. But even here in Tampa, I know a surprising number of women, young women, who are in sex work. And they do it by choice. When I lived on the West Coast, it was a lot less stigmatized. Sex work was a lot less stigmatized. And I even considered doing it myself. So, sometimes I think that our attempts to help have unintended consequences. And I just really hope that folks are listening, to the people who are most affected by this, obviously, on both sides. And I really hope that y'all take into consideration the things that my friends with the Sex Worker Solidarity Network have said today. So, thank you so much.
Yes. So we have two more people that are standing. Is there anyone else in the audience that's planning on speaking on this topic? Because if not, we're going to hear from our last two, and then we're going to close it out. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Councilman. My name is Talicia Espinosa, and I'm actually a survivor of sex trafficking here in the U.S. For me, choosing to have sex with someone, it can't be where that's something that you want to do. When I was a little girl, I was sexually molested by 3 different men by the age of 9. And so that, of course, led me onto a road of just being promiscuous through my teenage years to where I just wanted attention and wanted to be loved. And yes, sex had something to do with that, but that's what I put as love, where sex and love went together, even though it was abuse. And so for me, I get what they're saying where, oh, well, it's a choice. Well, really, it's not. It's degrading. It's degrading our bodies. It's telling men that, oh, we can be used as a piece of property or used as just someone you lay with for something that's not, where you're not in love with that person. You're just having sex. That's not right. Years later on down the road, you have to deal with the guilt, the shame of not wanting anyone to know what you've done. A woman can't tell me that the next morning when she wakes up next to a man that she doesn't know, that's not degrading, that's not something that they feel, wow, I just slept with someone I don't know. So you get up the next day and you just wash your face and you put on new clothes and act like nothing happened, yet you're feeling that shame and the guilt on the inside of you. I know that I did. And talking about the arrest, yes, prostitution is illegal. When I was trafficked, I was arrested a lot. I have a long record of being arrested in over 10 states and over 20 cities. So I have a long record, and yes, those records are being expunged as we speak, so that I can work with youth, because I want to work with youth, being able to lead them on the right direction of not having to go down that road and the way of thinking that that's your choice. It wasn't a choice. I didn't choose to be trafficked. He coerced me. Yes, I was in a strip club when he met me. I was a broken young girl at 19 that didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And this man comes walking into a club and he starts a conversation and takes me out of where I was comfortable and led me to a place where I didn't know anyone. And he started trafficking me for 4.5 years. And so for me, I say that to do this is not a choice, even though it may seem like it's a choice. It was something that he coerced me to do, and it was something that I was forced to do later on down the road. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. My name is Natalie Keene, and I'm with the U.S. Institute Against Human Trafficking. And it's an honor to stand here today before you on this National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, and to personally thank you, as well as the City Council, for your leadership and your dedication in towards protecting those who have no voice today and who cannot be here to share their testimonies, as these wonderful, courageous survivors have to us already this morning. And so it's because of your efforts, as well as the amazing organizations and the amazing individuals that are here with us today, working together, that I have faith that our city will continue in the direction that it is, and that is to potentially abolish this problem in our city and be a model going forward in our nation. So thank you very much today, and God bless.
Good morning. My name is Sydney Eastman. I'm with the Sex Worker Solidarity Network, as well as the Restorative Justice Coalition. Listening to the victim testimony, it's extremely powerful. And I hear what they're saying. They didn't have a choice. But what we say to people who never consented is, don't speak on behalf of those who do. This ordinance is written from the mindset that we need to rescue them by arresting them. And yeah, prostitution is illegal. If you want to go and arrest prostitutes, you absolutely can. That is within your right. However, we can compare it to the war on drugs, where we see drug addicts being arrested instead of providing compassionate care. We can compare it to the houseless, where we push them out of the city instead of bringing them into shelter. And that doesn't make the houseless any less houseless, and it doesn't make folks who are addicted to drugs any less addicted to drugs. So I know they're talking about putting programs in place that would actually help this problem. I would love to see that, but since they're not there, we're putting the cart before the horse. We really need to consider the research, which I know we've sent you a lot of research. Consider the research that you've gotten on this issue that shows what does work. We've proposed a solution that does work. There's a lot of options that haven't been considered here, and we're just asking to be brought to the table to do another workshop and really tighten up this ordinance so that it does solve the problem of human trafficking, as opposed to what we're seeing it do now, which is clean up Kennedy. I think we should be very honest in what we're doing. If we want to abolish prostitution, well, let's just say that that's what we're doing. But if we want to help victims, there are victim-centric solutions that we can look at that can be enacted on a city level. So I'm just asking you guys to delay the vote today. Give us some time to really come to the table and talk about those solutions, along with the mounds of research we've sent you. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
All right. What is the pleasure of Councilman Vieira?
Thank you, Councilman Cohen. I wanted to, a couple of issues. Like everybody here on council, I've read with interest all of the different emails and letters and memos and everything, and had discussions with people on both sides of this issue. I've read a couple of things. For one thing that struck me, I kept on seeing arguments on immunity for victims of human trafficking, which sounds great, and that is a proper policy. So I went ahead myself and reached out to the office of Andrew Warren, our state attorney, here for the 13th Judicial District here in Hillsborough County. And I got a response yesterday from his office, which I will read for the record, because I don't want anyone here to think that here in this community we prosecute and go after victims of human trafficking. That's not something that this body supports. Councilman Vieira, good afternoon. You inquired into whether the Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office prosecutes victims of sex trafficking-related crimes. Our office is firmly committed to protecting victims and achieving justice on their behalf. We are focused on prosecuting sex traffickers, pimps, and predators, not victims who are forced into the commercial sex trade. We make concerted efforts to identify victims of sex trafficking, to rescue them from their servitude and provide them with support services. Although there are instances where we can best protect sexually trafficked victims by using the criminal justice process, we do not prosecute victims of sex trafficking to seek conviction or punishment for their conduct. Let me know if you need any additional information. Thank you, Rena J. Frazier, Chief of Policy and Communication for the Office of State Attorney. So I went ahead and reached out because when I heard that, I went, that doesn't make much sense. Some of the other solutions that we've heard about, and I've read everything, including this How to Help Victims of Human Trafficking, a community statement for the City of Tampa, an anonymous tip line. There's many that exist. We have to do better in promoting them as a community. Outreach to victims. We referenced the fact that Colonel DJ Reyes is here from Veterans Treatment Court. Councilman Suarez, an idea that I've saluted him for and I think is a great idea, is to create a similar Victims of Human Trafficking Court for diversion for folks who have been trafficked. That is why on January 25th, we're going to have Colonel Reyes and the men and women from the Veterans Treatment Court brief us on what they've done, because that's something that this body supports. This is a good ordinance, but this ordinance does not stand by itself. This ordinance stands with community partners. Community partners, religious, secular, in government, in private enterprise, etc., including those such as our state attorney who gave us this statement for this today. I take a look at this ordinance and I see some of the accusations against it, and I just objectively see no consistency. The things that this ordinance seeks to do, closing bathhouses after 10 o'clock with signs, prohibiting sexual activities at spas, quarterly inspections, requiring human trafficking and prostitution awareness class, restrictions on felons. I see no causal link between that and the gross injustices that are being alleged here today. So again, the way I see it, I've done my homework. We've even had our state attorney's office speak out on some of the other collateral issues that have been addressed here today. And again, after looking at the record, I myself, I can only speak for myself, see no causal link between the injustices that have been alleged and this ordinance, which I'm prepared to support here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Miranda?
No, none. I just want to echo that when I grow up, I want to be able to speak as eloquently as Mr. Vieira.
Okay, we'll duly noted. Anyone else? Councilman Suarez.
Okay, Chair, if I could, I'll make a few comments and then I'll read the ordinance if that's all right, unless there's any other comments any of our council members want to make. I want to thank everyone who came out today. This is a process that we've been going through for the last 6 to 8 months. We had discussed it some 5 years ago, and we waited for the state to take some action on some of the illegal activities that were happening in some of these bathhouses. They, unfortunately, some of the things that they came up with have not been very well thought out or enforceable. So when we started to look at this more deeply, we met with our legal department. We met with the Polaris Project, which looks at folks that are victims of human trafficking. We looked at several other organizations, including the organization that Ms. Gruber Skipper is a head of. And one of the things that we kept coming back to is that those victims that have been in situations where they have been brought out and are being exploited, the location itself is what makes it a tough place to try and enforce. Meaning that if you are someone that is in the sex trade against your will, not willing participants, but people who are against their will, you can't escape that process. Primarily, they'll have you sleep in the place in which you are working. They will have food brought to you. They will have a person watching you 24 hours a day. And for us, that's the target of this particular ordinance. There has been some discussion, I think Mr. Vieira said it eloquently, this is not a criminal statute. This is an ordinance. It deals with the regulation of those operations that are called spas. It is not about criminalizing people who are victims of sexual trafficking. One of the things that we have tried to do, and this was something that came to us through Ms. Gruber Skipper, had came to me and she said, we don't want these places to shut down and then the victims have no place to go. That it gets even
more burrowed into the underground where we can't find human trafficked individuals. So I made the suggestion about our Veterans Treatment Court and saying, why can't we have a court specifically to target those people that have been wrongly arrested as prostitutes when in fact they are victims of human trafficking. That's something that we're working through currently, and Mr. Vieira read what Mr. Warren says as part of our state attorney. We know that the chief judge has been involved in these discussions too. We want them to create it because we do think that having a diversion program in order to identify those people that have been victims in these situations is a better way to deal with it than to put them as prostitutes and to tag them that it follows them for the rest of their lives. I would love for us to see us do that. We, unfortunately, on council do not have control over the courts. We, unfortunately, on council do not have control of the state attorney's office. We do have promises from them that this is the direction they want to go, and we are going to work diligently to make sure that that is the direction that it goes. I want to thank the folks that have asked us to delay this. I think that, and I mean this sincerely, that you should talk to the folks that have been working with us to try and craft this ordinance. I believe that there is a way that everyone can work towards solving this problem. The sex trafficking is what this is targeting. It is not targeting those willful individuals that are involved in prostitution. We cannot, on this board, or any city in the state of Florida, can change the state statute that deals with the criminalization of prostitution. We have no power in that way. We cannot put more penalties for someone for prostitution or eliminate those arrests or those penalties. So I say to the folks that have been asking us to delay, please meet with some of the counterparts that were part of this too. I believe that there is common ground that can be found. I believe that part of what we do in government is that we lose sight that it's really communities coming together that solves problems. It isn't only about an ordinance. It really is about the community coming together to say, we want this to stop. And I know many members of the folks that wanted us to delay this. Some of them are my friends. And I think that they know that I would never want to re-victimize people that have already been part of this horrible and evil crime. So with that, Chair, I'm going to go ahead and...
Before you do, just two things. First of all, we'll need a motion to close before you read it.
Absolutely.
And then I just wanted to say that in terms of the people that asked for the delay, one of the things that was said was that there were ideas for improving the ordinance or making it better. And I just want you all to know, we're all ears, and just because we pass an ordinance today doesn't mean that we can't continue to work on the topic. It's really the beginning, not the end. So the door is open, and I know I'm willing, and I know the others are willing to meet with people that have ideas on other things that they'd like to see us do. And with that...
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to close from Councilman Reddick, seconded by Councilman Miranda. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Councilman Suarez.
I present an ordinance for second reading and adoption. An ordinance of the City of Tampa, Florida, relating to bathhouses, making revisions to the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Business Regulation, amending Section 6-4 definitions, deleting Section 6-40 through 6-46, amending Sections 6-47 through 6-65, reserved, amending Division 4, bathhouses, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, providing for severability, providing an effective date.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Suarez, seconded by Councilman Maniscalco. Please record your vote.
Motion carried with Capeen being absent.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to move on now to item number 50.